We got that 5 p.m. advisory in from the National Hurricane Center. It includes, in this new bulletin, the possibility of a peak storm surge of 5 to 10 feet above normally dry ground at high tide, somewhere along the southern shores of Jamaica. Let's bring in Fox Weather hurricane specialist Brian Norcross for his analysis. Brian, we've been talking about Gilbert, 1988, as the comp for this, right? A Category 3 technically at landfall. Sandy, that produced a surge of over 8 feet on the southern shores of Jamaica. That was a Category 1. It appears as though this could be a much, much worse scenario.
Yeah, well, the southern part of Jamaica has these bays all along there. And so the bays are like catcher's mitts, and they grab the storm surge, and there's no way it can get out. So it has to go over the beaches and up over whatever it happens to be there. As a matter of fact, in Kingston, the airport, the international airport, is out on a peninsula out in Kingston Harbor. So that is subject to being flooded in this situation, which may aggravate the recovery process. So this is a daunting thing if the storm comes in as forecast, which is going to put tremendous amount of water into Kingston Harbor and the surrounding harbors and bays there on the eastern part of that country. All right, let's look at the 5 p.m. advisory and hear what you see. 65 miles per hour is the estimate. Now that was not measured by hurricane hunters. That was estimated because the satellite presentation is becoming more obviously related to a stronger storm. So they make the estimates off of that. And that's what they're estimating right now, 65 miles per hour. Because the wind is estimated to be higher, the pressure is estimated to be lower. So we're awaiting the aircraft to go in there. A NOAA aircraft is coming out of Florida. There'll be another Air Force Reserve aircraft in there later on, and we'll get the updates here this evening. And now moving to the north, so kind of back on track of the way it was expected to go in the first place, drifting north, but the idea is that it's going to head on off to the west here pretty soon when it gets picked up by high pressure building to the north here. Not a whole lot of it, just weak high pressure, but it will move it over so that it moves south of Jamaica, at least for a while. All right, here's the presentation from the satellite, and you can see, look what we have here today that we didn't have yesterday, is we have, first of all, a very circular looking storm up in here, but then we have these bands. Look at these outer bands that are clearly rotating in. So all this is evidence of the fact that the atmosphere around this storm is conducive for intensification, and the National Hurricane Center says this is going to intensify in a big way because it's out over the water. The water is near record warm there in the Caribbean. So the idea is already by tomorrow this time, you have a 100-mile-an-hour hurricane. Sunday, 140-mile-an-hour Category 4 hurricane. And then Monday up knocking on the door of Category 5. So Category 5 would be if it were 160. They're forecasting 155. Obviously, that's kind of in the noise whether this gets to be Category 5 or not. The Google DeepMind model that has done so well this year indeed shows a high possibility of a Category 5 in this time period. Now, we put the center line on there because the storm is moving so slowly. It's hard to tell exactly what's going on without it. But I don't want you to concentrate on it because it makes a tremendous difference if this thing comes out here. Still would be a good forecast out here as a high-end Category 4 or Category 5, but would make a big difference in what the impacts are on the island. So we don't want to get any bogged down here on looking at any individual line, but the trend today has been for this to move more toward the center of the island. But I just really want to add that the difference between here and here is way less than the average error at that time. That's what these lines represent. is kind of the average error, or 2/3 error, 2/3 chance that it would stay in there, but they're built off the average error in National Hurricane Center forecasts. And we do have just a developing system here. So indeed, if this is what happens, this is very bad for the population center of Jamaica that's over on this side here. The idea is that over Jamaica, if it goes directly over the island, that the high terrain there would weaken the system. So we have a weaker system than over Cuba. Again, there's high terrain here that would weaker system when it approaches the southeast Bahamas on Wednesday afternoon. All right, so here is the Google DeepMind model. This is the afternoon run, and there you see going there and there. But we don't look at the individual lines except to see what's the scope of the possibilities. And you notice it tells us that everything in the kind of eastern 2/3 of Jamaica are the possibilities. The actual forecast is the average of those lines, and there you see the afternoon forecast. Remember that the circulation of the storm is this way, so that means it's pushing water here. It's pushing water up into Kingston Harbor, which is there, and the other bays here, and all along the south coast of Jamaica. It's pushing water if that ends up being the exact track. It's actually going over the tall mountains here, which means more moisture against the mountains, which means more water running downstream through the capital and on down into the Caribbean. So all this is bad on a track like that. It's bad no matter where. Any of those tracks are bad unless it happens to somehow go out here, but that's a infinitesimal chance of it missing the island according to the Google DeepMind model. Now, when we look at the European model, it's essentially the same. A little bit different, and it swings a little wider before it gets there, but still, the idea is a very, very threatening looking track based on this afternoon's information. We look at the whole package of possible tracks. You can see that let's just ignore the yellow ones for now. That's the GFS, and it has been acting oddly. Look at the red ones, and you see it's a similar thing from here over to here. So still a possibility anywhere across Jamaica, but the highest odds based on this afternoon's information is that it's somewhere directly over the island, putting the strong winds coming onshore, directly onshore, which is the maximum way you can get wind. The case of Hurricane Gilbert, it came in a different direction, and that actually cut down the winds from Gilbert. I'll talk more about that in just one moment. But when we add up all those lines, all that spaghetti that you saw, and say, where are the odds? Well, you just have high odds that Jamaica is right in the middle of it. Exactly where the track is, it's just too early to say. We're talking about something that's going to happen on Tuesday, late Monday into Tuesday. Maybe we'll get that approach to Jamaica. So this far out for the system that's just developing, we still expect some movement in the models, but they have tended to converge now on a direct hit on Jamaica, and then direct hit on the eastern part of Cuba, and then moving up into the southeastern Bahamas. Obviously, we have lower odds as we go further in time. We're talking about Wednesday before it gets to the Bahamas or the Turks and Caicos, somewhere down there in the extreme southern part of that archipelago. All right, so in terms of the rain, we still are seeing the forecasts here of very heavy rain in the 2 to 3 foot range in Haiti, and heavy rain over the Dominican Republic on the southern coast and on up into Cuba. And then in Jamaica, the analysis is from the European model. Look at the purples here. The purples are up in the 2 foot range. Some areas maybe up to 3 feet of rain. Here, the tall mountains are up in here where you can see the mountains there in the topography, but the tall one is up in this area here. So that's going to catch that moisture, and that moisture will run downhill, and then it has to go out through the various rivers and gullies and creeks and streams to get down to the Caribbean. What's driving all this? Well, here we have we're going all the way to Tuesday here, and you can see the European model and the National Hurricane Center have the system just approaching Jamaica at that time. So earlier today, the European model was well displaced from the Hurricane Center's forecast, and now everything is pretty much in line. The timing is a little bit different, but you can see the direction is the same to take it up to Cuba and across Cuba into the Bahamas. So, I just think it's important, Ian, that everybody remember that just because it shifted like this doesn't mean it can't shift back. All of Jamaica is well within the errors that you expect for something that's going to happen late Monday into Tuesday. So we just need to keep an open mind here. And folks in Western Jamaica, for example, Montego Bay, shouldn't say we dodged the bullet. No bullets have been dodged yet because we don't know the fine details of this, and we're not going to know them here for a couple of days.
Yeah, Brian, clearly the entire island is still facing a considerable threat. We certainly hope this forecast as it is, especially you mentioned the deep mine model, that going right over the top, kind of the center of the island with how hot, how well that's been performing. It's an uncomfortable look. You mentioned the airport. I was curious. Average elevation of the airport, at least as reported on their website, is 3 meters. Something, just short of 10 feet.
Right.
And that's what the NHC was indicating as the potential max storm surge.
Right. And there's a kind of a causeway that goes out to that airport. So, it's likely that the airport will be flooded. I was looking at the elevations. The runways, this is all kind of landfill out there. The runways extend out into the harbor, and that's flood prone. So I don't think if anything like this happens and storm surge goes in there, that airport is going to be functioning when this storm is over. Now, how long it'll take them to get it all cleaned up and working, I don't know. They only have one runway there, so we'll see. This may be a case that people have to use Montego Bay to get out if a track over the center of the island or near Kingston ends up being what happens.
Yeah, these are all the things that we'll be watching very closely through the weekend, the early part of next week. That's Fox Weather Hurricane Specialist Brian Norcross.